This is Corey Kupfer on Mindset by Design.
Okay, Mindset by Design crew. So, as always, you've had my awesome intro, so you know I'm really pumped about today's guest. Corey, sir, how are you, mate? It's great to see you, buddy.
I am great, and I'm even better now seeing you. It's been too long.
We think the same, mate. We think the same. It's man, it's like it was a random thing that we got caught up with, how we even connected. But that was like, it's got to be way over 6 months ago, right?
Yeah, I think so. And then, we had this great conversation, totally hit it off. You and I think the same way. We're totally aligned. And then, of course, lives got busy. And so I'm so glad to be reconnected here and on your podcast.
I know. And I appreciate your time, man, because I know you're crazy busy. And you just come back from Nepal, right?
Yeah, I actually, I just came back from Miami, but right before that, I came back from Nepal. Listen, I travel a lot and I love it, but this was one of those bucket list, once in a lifetime, type trips. I mean, it was unbelievable.
So what spurred it? What was it like? Was it you and your wife? Was it always wanting to go, or what?
No, so I'm for a decade a member of Entrepreneurs Organization (EO), and we have something called the Forum, and we so it was basically me and 6 other business owners who get together once a month in a confidential environment, but then we do 2 retreats a year. And my forum is particularly adventurous. Not all the forums do this, but our long retreat tends to be pretty long. And we also almost always go out of the country. In fact, our forum constitution requires us to go international on our long retreat.
That's awesome, man.
7 entrepreneurs, 7 business owners. We actually, did get some good support work done and presentations on opportunities and challenges in our business. But then we did just a lot of amazing, fun stuff in Nepal.
What's Nepal like? I've literally don't know too much about it besides it looks remote, beautiful, and mountainous.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good description. I mean, listen, obviously it's known for the Himalayas and for Everest. And, and we took a helicopter ride to Base Camp Everest. I mean, I will never, ever, ever forget that.
Wow. Because people are like living and camping there, right?
Yeah. So what happens is you can trek into Base Camp Everest, right? And there are, there's a whole, not that like it's commercialized at all, but there are porters that help you carry your stuff or whatever. But it's a 12-day trek, right? And that would have been, we were there for 12 days. That would have been our whole trip. So we were all going to do that. So we took the easy way. We hopped a helicopter, and it's amazing. So we had a perfect weather day with a super experienced pilot. 22,000 feet in the air on a helicopter, okay? Flying over Everest, flying over the Kandu ice fall, which is the ice fall that they climb up, but one of the most dangerous parts of the Everest climb out of base camp because it's like this moving ice and they do the ladders and all that kind of stuff. So we're not on that, but we were flying over it. And the views, I mean, it's a perfect day. The views were amazing. And then we land. When I say we went to base camp, you actually cannot land on base camp if you're not a rescue helicopter, but we landed very close to base camp where we could see base camp, we could see the ice fall, and we could see Everest Peak right here.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's mind-blowing, man. Because you must have, besides it being stunningly incredible, that's like 22,000 feet in the air is where a plane goes, man.
It's crazy in a helicopter. It's crazy. And then when we landed, we were like 17,000, 18,000 feet, and then after we did that, we hopped in the helicopter and went to what's supposedly the highest restaurant in the world and had breakfast outside looking at Everest.
At 17,000 feet.
Yeah.
Dude,
yeah.
You best got some good photos.
Oh, I got amazing photos. Amazing photos. I actually even did a video from up there and posted on my sites talking about the experience. It was listen, like I said, I travel a lot. I know you travel a lot. Sure. And it's I love traveling in general, but there's these rare trips you take that are just stand out. This was one of them.
I get it. Did you interact with any of the locals?
We did. We definitely did. I mean, so, after that, we were trekking for 4 or 5 days, we trekked some of these paths that go up the mountains, trek right through, villages, and and then we had a local guide was with us the whole week. We got actually connected through. So when I was president of the New York chapter of Entrepreneurs Organization, I got to know the guy who was president of the Nepal chapter. And AJ, who hooked us up with all the right connections there. So yeah, we had a local guide and we had local porters, and we really asked them a lot of questions. And then we met a bunch of the local people. We spent an afternoon with a monk there, about meditation and doing all that kind of stuff. We had that local, that kind of experience. And,
amazing.
Yeah, and it was we did some photo safari after the trekking, and it was just so some rhinos.
Man, I want to go Nepal, dude. I want to join your chapter and then go Nepal. So let's talk about mindset around the locals.
Yeah.
Because you traveled so much around the world and the US and everywhere else, and I find it such radical differences in the way that the cultures think. Even in the US is like about 50 countries in one, for a start, right? And every one of them thinks different. But like the happiest people, sorry, Mindset by Design crew, you've heard me say this about 50 times, but the happiest people I've ever met are the Balinese and the Fijians. They're just living that simple life, right? They're not striving with ego. They're just living. And what were the what were the local people like? Well, what was their mindset?
It's interesting you say that, because I think Nepal's a lot like that. I mean, they're like on the happiness surveys, they're up there. And listen, it is far from, it is a very poor country overall. Certainly, out of the cities, people are, sustenance farming and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And in the cities, this is the amazing thing to me. So, of course, they had a couple of years ago, they had that horrible earthquake.
Yes.
And Kathmandu is still rebuilding from that. And there's construction all over the place. There's traffic all over the place. There's, this is in Kathmandu. Once you get out of the city, it's just, the air is beautiful and clean and whatever. But in Kathmandu, there's this, they walk around with masks most of the time, because breathing, there's all this, sand and dirt in the air, whatever.
Oh, wow.
But yet, the grace and the positivity and the, level of connectedness is amazing. And it's so, listen, I've had this experience when I've traveled a lot. I remember being in villages in Ghana and Uganda and India back in my Hunger Project days, and having the same sense that, we live in this supposedly, modern, progressive, more successful, blah, blah, blah society. And exactly, a lot of air quotes, right? And we, and not everybody, whatever, but as a culture, there's a culture just being disconnected, to nature, to the earth, to spirit, to whatever, everything that's trying to distract us and drive us and divide us and whatever. And in some of these other places like Nepal and some of the places I've been, other places in the world, there is much more of a community, a connectedness to spirit, a connectedness to nature, music is part of life. It's just so different. And Nepal's like that. And listen, there's some challenges there, but it's a place where generally people, are happy, and the crime rate is very low.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. It's fascinating that you've been to all of those countries too, and there's probably another dozen. But and that's what you and me connected. You know what I mean? Because you're quite unique in your world, right? You live right. You've got houses all over the place, but New York is where you were like based, and then you've got this hugely successful law firm, and you've just done so many things at high level business. Yet you must stand out because you're really heart connected.
Yeah, listen, I appreciate you saying that, and that's what not the first time I've heard it, and it's for me, listen, it's been a journey. I'm not like I wasn't born operating this way, totally. Well, I take that back. Okay. I think everybody was born. I was born operating this way, because I think every human is born operating that way. But then, of course, I was quickly socialized out of it, and then had to come back to it, right? So. you know, but it's been an interesting journey for me because, I mean, listen, I always had a commitment to what I now call, you know, authenticity, which is a big value of mine. I might not have had as much definition around it.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's a lot of temptation, especially, you know, in the Western world, in the business world and whatever. And, you know, to be driven by money, or to be driven by power, to be driven by, you know, reputation. And I don't mean the reputation in the good way, like to keep it, but just like, you know,
identity.
Yeah. So, and, you know, so it's frankly hard to resist that. But so, you know, I think there's the work I did on that early and I came to it, you know, a lot of people, they get into their 50s or 60s and then they've been successful and they look around and say, is this all there is in life? And then they look to do something more meaningful. For some reason, I got there when I was in, let's see, I was in my late 20s, right? So like I was in my late 20s and I started thinking, is this all there is? And that's why at 30, I left big law firm practice and opened my own firm. And at the same time, I started looking for stuff that was more meaningful. And that's when I got involved with the Hunger Project and spent time in villages in Uganda and Ghana and India. So like I had that shift, I had that, you know, move to meaning way earlier than a lot of people do. I don't know why that happened, but, you know, so I'm 58 now. So it's been almost half my life that I've been operating out of that way, you know, since those experiences.
And that's a beautiful, mate. I love it. And is that where, because one of the big things you're known for, besides all the other things that you've done, is negotiation. And the thing is, the book that you wrote, which I really, really thought was such a brilliant concept. And I just teach my version of that in a different way, but you're teaching it specifically for negotiation, authentic negotiating. Because the old school mindset, maybe I'm wrong with this, but the old school mindset is, again, like you talk about that word power, identity, force, negotiating and not creating a win-win, but taking. And it's accumulating and guessing and guessing and guessing. And you're just seeing that world a completely different way, right?
Yeah, and not only do I see it in a different way, and I have a whole different methodology,
right?
And which some people might interpret as just, yes, more aligned and better, but they may question whether it's as effective.
Right.
And the truth is, it's actually more effective. Okay? Because here's the thing. This is what I always say. There are two types of negotiations. Okay? One is a negotiation with, you know, somebody you may never see again, and whatever, it's a one-off. Okay?
Right.
And even in that case, you get a reputation over time in business. It's a small world. But the far majority of business negotiations, at least, are either the start of or the continuation of an existing relationship, right? It's a negotiation with a business partner, with a vendor you're going to be working with clients over fees or whatever it is, with, you know, industry partners, joint venture, strategic alliances, whatever it is, right? It's part of an ongoing relationship. And if you leverage power, if you know, win the negotiation to beat somebody up, how does that affect, you know, the relationship? I mean, you see it over the easiest example, because you see this over and over and over again, is somebody hires right? They want to, you know, do a renovation of their home, or maybe it's their office or whatever, right? And they bid out and they negotiate like crazy, and they get the lowest bid on the contractor, and they think they've done a great job negotiating, right? And then inevitably, how often does that contractor not finish the job, screw it up, not pay the subs, the job gets stuck, right? You got to fire them. You got to go hire another contractor. You got to go, right? So you won that negotiation. You got them down another, you know, $2,000 or $10,000 or whatever dollars, but you've lost. And, you know, and that happens in business as well. So there's a whole approach to authentic negotiating, and it's beyond win-win, although that's a concept that, you know, I believe in. But the problem is, the minute you put win in somebody's mind, it's hard to, you know, get out of it.
Right, you go to battle, you go to win, right?
Exactly. So there's a whole different approach. I have the CDE, you know, framework: clarity, detachment, equilibrium, and it helps you keep much more aligned to your objectives, and also is more successful.
Beautiful. What was that acronym then?
Yeah. So it's CDE. The C stands for clarity. Okay. So the first thing is, the first body of work, which I negotiate multi-million-dollar deals, and it's amazing. The majority of the time, people don't do the level of work to get crystal clear on exactly what they want, what they don't want. And there's an external body of research to do that, right? What is industry norms? What due diligence should I do? But there's an internal body of work that people skip on all the time. Like, what is the why? Why am I really doing this deal? What do I really want out of it? Like, what's important to me? Okay. Why am I looking to buy this other company? Am I just looking to grow for my ego, or is it really, do I have deeper objectives? Like, what is the, and then exactly what will work for me and what won't work for me? Like, literally down to the, not a penny more, not a penny less. Like, get that crystal level of clarity. And if you don't do that, you're in trouble in negotiation from minute one.
Interesting. And that includes like how you want to go in with the relationship and how you want to move into the future with, not just about literally the money terms, right? It's how you, what the dynamics you want.
That's right. It's not only the quantitative, it's the qualitative, right?
Right.
And I've got a whole tool I give in the book on how people can help determine this. What happens is people get thrown off on a negotiation. They get triggered. They go on tangents because they don't have clarity in the first place. They have how do you judge? Somebody makes a counter offer, or they look the structure in a different way. You have no grounding. You have no floor. You have no basis to judge whether that works for you or not if you haven't really done the work to get that level of crystal clarity. And people skip over. So
is that laziness, Corey? Is that laziness, or is it?
I say it's a few things. Sometimes it's laziness. Sometimes it's busyness, right? As entrepreneurs, we're busy, we're running, right? It's, we don't think. It's a lack of understanding how important it is. And listen, let me get to the real stuff. And you deal with this all the time. What it also is, it's the fact that as human beings, we really don't want to go deep inside of ourselves most of the time. The inner work is hard. True. It's hard. It's ugly sometimes, And I think we avoid that. So, and it's easy in a business deal to think, I'll just wing it, or, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm good on my feet, whatever. I don't need to really, what is this inner work you're talking about? I'm just negotiating a business deal. Well, no.
Right. And that's the problem with everything about business, right? Because like you talk about, it's going in to win. And that's unfortunate. Like, whether it's an old culture that's starting to change, you're going to know more than me from your side. Like, from my side, it's like I go in and change that brain to think a different way. But like, to stop the hardness, instead of we're having behavioral flexibility, and like we're open to different things, and we're looking at things from a higher level perspective rather than like a horse with blinkers on going after to take. But do you see a shift in business and culture in general? Or I don't know. What do you see?
I do. I mean, listen, I'd like this to be faster, but listen, I do think there is a generational difference. I do think, the quote unquote millennials and, the younger generation, whatever. I mean, I hate to, I'm not big on characterizing entire groups of people to have, but in general, I mean, what we definitely see is that there's more consciousness in my mind, and they're expecting companies and brands to, have much more of a social impact in addition to a profit motive. I think we've moved to, even in the States, we even have legal structures that are developing to support that in terms of what they call B Corps or type B corporations, where, it used to be that you had for-profit companies, and then you had not-for-profits, charities. Right. And that was it. And the problem was people who really, and I was actually involved somewhat in some of the early discussions around that. We used to call it the fourth sector, and then it's evolved where you had a bunch of people who were like conscious, and they were like, wait a second, can I make money and also do good? Like, why do I have to either have an obligation to make as much money as I can and build a business, especially if I have shareholders and I'm legally obligated to increase the value of their ownership, right? Or I need to have a nonprofit where I can't make money, where I can only do good. And there are a lot, so what's happened is you now have these socially conscious companies and B Corps and things like that, where actually not only, I mean, the legal structures always follow, that didn't lead, but the consciousness shifted where we say, because I believe you can, not only can you, but you should do both. Because here's the thing, I have had so many friends. I mean, my wife and I are involved in a lot of causes. We had our own nonprofit for many years.
Beautiful.
And one of the challenges of the nonprofit model, if you're not, the metropolitan in New York or whatever, is that you're usually underfunded, overworked, understaffed, right? And so we've seen so many people who are making so much good in the world, doing so much good in the world, who are struggling to pay their light bill, right? And their health. I mean, we had a good friend who was doing amazing work with young women in Washington D.C. in the U.S. Who came from abuse, abusive relationships and things like that.
Oh.
And really helping them shift their mindset and be successful in life, whatever. And she did amazing work until she dropped dead at the age of 40 because she was just working around the clock for her cause, right? And trying to raise the money and trying to keep the lights on and trying to have the impact and whatever. And, that and other reasons had me, I'm not saying there's not space for the nonprofit model, but this concept of how do you have a sustainable business in life, make money, there's nothing wrong with that, and have impact as well. So that's what a big focus. And I do think that that's becoming much more ingrained in the culture of younger folks in terms of the expectation. You see it in corporate advertising, and sometimes it's garbage because they're just trying to capture a trend.
Right.
But I do think there's, some of them are really getting it, that the marketplace wants socially conscious impact business. And I think that's much more consistent with the way I do business. And the way I teach negotiating, the way I do deals, and the way I, work with my entrepreneurial clients.
And do life. And I suppose you see it like on a certain aspect, obviously not with everyone, but in the finance world, with hedge funds are starting to change with this. And you have like Warren Buffett giving everything away, and like Bill Gates giving everything away. And it's like, and I learned that the new hedge funds out there, that instead of waiting until the end to give their profits away, that actually the business model is actually giving away their profits as they're going, rather than waiting, we'll keep all this until the end and then we'll give it away. But that doesn't help anything. So I love that. What about D? What's D, buddy? We got C, right. What's the D?
Right, so the D is detachment, okay? And it's the ability to be detached to the outcome. It's what in not that I'm not that I'm an expert, but I guess Buddhists say unattached. They don't like detached because what I mean by detached is not like you don't care, right? Not that kind of detachment.
Right.
Not, but that, so as an example, if you and I are negotiating a deal, I should have a preference we get the deal done, because or else why am I talking to you? Right. There's no reason for it. Right. But ultimately, I should be equally fine if we get a deal done or we don't get a deal done. Because if I've gone through the clarity process and I've got 100% clear on my objectives, what works for me, what doesn't work for me, then when we are in a negotiation and you have what works for you and what doesn't work for you, right? They will either meet up or they won't. Okay?
Right.
And if they align, then we should do a deal, and that's great. If they don't align, then we shouldn't do a deal. And you know what? That's great as well. And that's the piece that people have so much trouble with. See, if Andy and I are supposed to do a deal, we'll do a deal now. If not, then it doesn't mean that Andy's a jerk or a horrible guy or is, or whatever, doesn't know what he's talking about. It just means that your objectives in this moment don't align with my objectives in this moment. So maybe we'll do a deal later. Maybe we're just not meant to do a deal. Maybe I'll find someone else to do a deal. Maybe I'm not meant to do a deal at all at this time. And if we can have that mentality and ultimately be detached to the outcome, then we'll do better deals and we won't do bad deals. But that's hard for people because people get attached.
People get very attached to a concept that they developed in their head, and they must make that happen. But the truth is, life doesn't work like that, right? And that's how people cause themselves stress and anxiety and nervous breakdowns, and also get into situations that they don't know how to get out of. And I'm sure understand that with business. It's a case of, especially what you've done, it's a case of, I got told it's like, be very careful with business relationships because it's like a marriage. It's very easy to get in, but real hard to get out.
Hard, costly, economically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, all that stuff. Yeah. So, listen, there's a saying, that I love in deal stuff, is that the only worse than not getting a deal done is doing a bad deal. So you're much better off not doing the deal than doing a bad deal. And, how do you do that? Well, you stay detached. You get clear and then you stay detached. That's the C and the D.
I love that, mate. I love that. So we got an E.
We got an E.
E, bud?
So E is equilibrium. So
Okay.
how do you maintain your equilibrium? So now you're in the negotiation. Let's say you've done the C and the D, right? You've got it totally clear. You say, oh, I'm going to stay detached. It's I'm okay if we do a deal, not to deal. Now you get into the negotiation, right?
Okay.
Now things get heated. Things get distressed. Somebody makes a comment that triggers you. Somebody says your company's not worth half that, whatever it is, right? It's so easy to get thrown off because we're human beings and we do have egos no matter what kind of work we do, and
we're human.
somebody insults us and whatever it is, okay? So the equilibrium is how do we stay during the negotiation in that place, centered, aligned, connected to our clarity, connected to our detachment, right? How do we maintain that equilibrium? And in the book, in the Authentic Negotiating book, I give some tools, for that. I have a very specific tool at the end that's phenomenal for that. Because the bottom line is, even if you do the great work on the clarity and detachment, if you let your equilibrium get thrown off during the negotiation, you're in trouble because you're going to lose connection to that, and it's all out the window.
I love that.
That's the
And that's being in that peak state. That's being in that what I call a world-class state or an 8-figure thinker state. And that's how you're able to keep that equilibrium, right? Because if you haven't pre-designed who you are to step into that moment, and you haven't, like you say, got clarity on the outcome, and then you're reacting because you haven't prepared yourself, and your adrenaline's all over the place, and your nervous system's off, and you haven't trained the neurology, then you're going to be way out of whack with that equilibrium. That's a powerful acronym, but I love it.
It happens all the time in negotiations. It happens all the time. So yeah. So the thing that's interesting is, see, when you get the CD, if you really get CDE, not just on an intellectual level, but really can have it in your body, you're in such a powerful place, because I don't care if I'm negotiating with somebody, and I've had this, and they're yelling and screaming or banging the table or whatever. Doesn't affect me. They're making accusations, doesn't affect me. In fact, I'll very often let them talk, ask them follow-up questions, smile. And part of it is that, especially these tough negotiators, these, men and women who think
closes,
more often men, but I'll say men and women who, who think, they're gonna bully you, whatever.
Right.
Their expected response is either for you to shrink away in fear or to come back at them. And they're prepared for either of those responses. What they're not prepared for, and they have no idea how to deal with, is somebody who stays calm and centered, is not afraid, but yet doesn't get in a reactive mode. They have no idea what to do with that.
That makes sense, right? That's being world class. That's being the highest level. And because they're used to dealing with ego. So the ego is dealing with an ego, and that's the battle, right? When they've got their ego going, rah, and then they're like, ow,
right.
Ow, what do I do here? Do you find then they settle down?
So it's interesting what happens. A lot of times, I'll give you one story, right? So I was, and I tell this story in the book, but I was actually representing a friend of mine who happens to be an attorney, but he's not. He does other kinds, he doesn't do deal stuff. But he was a business partner in something totally separate from his law firm with two other partners, and they got into a dispute about how the company should be run and different things or whatever.
Right.
So I'm on the phone with the attorney for the other two partners. I'm representing my friend. And he is just yelling and screaming, what a horrible person my guy is and all the bad things he did. Now, fortunately, I knew this guy for, over a decade, right? So I knew who he was. I knew these things weren't true. Sometimes you have a client, that you just got introduced to. You frankly don't know. Maybe it is true. Him, it was easy for me because I knew him, right?
Right.
Long story short, as opposed to coming back at him, whatever, I just let him talk, and I would say to him, okay, anything else you want to tell me? Or I would ask a follow-up question. He would go off for another 10, 15 minutes. And I would just sit there. And then calmly, when he finally, got done with all the ranting and sort of ran out of steam, because I kept asking him, and it was like 45 minutes later, I said to him, I forget his name now, but, let's say Bill, I said to him, well, Bill, listen, I just want to let you know, I want to just let you know, I fundamentally disagree with pretty much everything, you said. And then he went off again, and I was just like, and listen, I know my client, I know it's not the case. If you want to sue on that basis, I'm confident you're not going to win. So, do what you need to do. But, I would suggest that it would be better to come to an amicable arrangement.
Right.
And then I also, in that case, said to him, and listen, I want to just say something to you because you've been yelling at me for 45 minutes, right? And I understand you're representing your client, but frankly, we're attorney colleagues. We both have a job to do. I frankly, I don't operate that way. In terms of, and he said, well, I'm sorry, I'm just passionate about, representing my client. I said, yeah, so am I, but doesn't mean you have to. He actually apologized to me. Right. He said, I'm so sorry. And then, we sort of ended the call. He said, he'll talk to his client. And this is the interesting part. Never heard from him again. And then a few weeks later, they had hired new counsel. And what was clear to me was this guy tried what he knew how to do. It failed. And then he was sort of out of tricks, like, I don't know what to do now. So his clients got frustrated and hired someone else.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
See, that's clever though. That's so clever because you just allowed him to just do his thing and then he got confused, which again, that's the power of again, authentic negotiating, right? And that's the power of how I bet you had a bigger law practice for a start, right? And it's, of course, and it's like, but is that the secret to your success? Because you connected with yourself in your 30s, So is that the secret of how you built this size of that business, that one business? Is that the secret?
I think it's part of it. I think the other big piece of it is for me, and this has become popular to say, but I've been doing it for a long time.
Of course.
Is that I come from a service mentality.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, servant leadership. I believe, I really, everybody says they care about their clients, they want to do their best and whatever, but there's a lot of things that get in the way of it. And for me, it's always what's best for the client, right? I don't care if it makes me less money. I don't care if this rarely happens, but I've had it where I will say to people, you know what? I'm not the best person to work with. You should go work with this person. They're going to be better for you for this particular thing. And I want you to be served, right? I'll turn away business if we're not the right fit. And I think that service mentality, and it also, like, it shows up in the organizations I'm involved in, whether it was, my board service with Entrepreneurs Organization, being president there. I'm now on the board of National Speakers Association. I've never lobbied for positions. Like, there are people who try to move up the chain. I just, whatever role I'm in, I go out, I show up and I do, and I do my best at it for the benefit of whoever the constituents are, for the members of the organization, for my clients, whatever. And then next thing I know, I get tapped on the shoulder and they want to play a bigger role and you should be president of the organization, right? Same thing happens in business, right? If you do the right thing, if you serve people, and here's the part that throws most people off, and it's counterintuitive, is that if you come from a service mentality and you value yourself, you have to do this as well. I mean, let me put that in there, because
that's self-worth, right?
Right. Because some people, give away all their services for free or charge nothing because they don't value themselves. And that's a problem, right? So you need to combine the service mentality with understanding that there's value for the service you provide. And people say to me, I'm not cheap, right? I'm not the most expensive guy out there, but I'm also not cheap, right?
I'm sure.
Say to me, how do you figure out what you charge? And I always say, well, listen, yes, I get a feel for what the industry's doing, whatever, but then it's an internal, I go inside and I get connected to what is the appropriate amount, hourly rate, project fee, whatever it is, that I should be charging, where I know that I can provide value to the client that is going to equal or exceed that number. And as long as I can do that, then that's what I do. So if you come from a service mentality and then you value the level of service and the value you can provide to people in a fair way, you're going to be successul. You can trust. You don't have to worry about the money coming in. It will come in.
Right. And there's the key word you said, not to worry, because if your self-worth and if you're vibing high, as they say, if you're going after things, if you're helping constantly and your focus isn't on scarcity, your focus is on service, then there's only one thing that can happen, right? And as long as, again, the key word is, you're not a starving artist, or you're not like a starving musician, right? Or a comic. you know, because they all have this lack mentality. Oh, you can't be a good musician if, right? If you got money in the bank, it means you can't really connect with your soul. But that's not the truth. It's the opposite. By being connected with yourself in such a growth mode inside yourself, then you can have clarity. You can be detached, right? You can do all these things with the equilibrium. I love it, man. You just, dude, I'm coming to New York. We got to hang out.
Absolutely. And listen, here's the thing. Because I have this conversation with, let's call them spiritual people, conscious people all the time, right?
Yep.
You know, who have this, thing about business and money and how it, it's automatically corrupts you, whatever. It's evil, exactly. And no, it's like everything is what you created it as. It's how you do it. And yes, I get there are systems out there in the business side, in politics, in all these places, whatever, that have, very bad characteristics to them or hold things in place institutionally that are problematic, right? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean you have to buy into those paradigms. That's the key thing, right? You can actually, it's so easy to think that you can't create a paradigm that works for you within business or within, whatever it is, but you can. Now, listen, it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of pressures, in the other direction. But you can do it. It just takes, listen, it goes back to what I said earlier. It takes an internal body of work that most of us are not willing to do and isn't easy.
And that's the whole point, right? It's not easy, but who wants, no result comes from being easy. If everybody can do it, then it's, to me, and I'm sure with you, it's not got the same worth. I want to work hard because I'll work harder than most people, right? I want to learn because I'll learn more than most people. I want to be best that I possibly humanly can be at my job because I know that serves more people.
That's right.
So I'm constantly in growth mode. So let me ask you a question, Bud. If you could rewind the clock 5 years, 10 years, what would you do different?
Yeah, so I think a big thing that comes to mind for me, and maybe it would be rewinding the clock more like 15 years, is
go there.
Because 10 years ago is when I started getting it. So even though I was fortunate enough to have some experiences and I think get to a level of sort of consciousness and service and wanting to make a difference and mattering much earlier in my life, there was this other journey that I sort of went on to feel comfortable having my full self be able to show up in all aspects and everywhere I was, right? Because I would have, I'd have my lawyer persona, I'd have my activist persona, I'd have my, right, all over. And they were all true to they were part of who I was. So they weren't false, they weren't masked, they were true to who I was, but they were still compartmentalized a little bit. Right. Mm-hmm. So, I might in terms of the causes and things I cared about, I might maybe in certain of my lawyer, aspects, I wouldn't necessarily talk about that because who knows what this person believes in, or maybe I don't want people to know, or they don't. And that was something, 15 years ago till 10 years ago, I was really on a journey of saying, hey, I want to be able to show up fully as who I am in every environment that I'm in. And I am who I am, and people, and whatever, people will opt in or out of being, in my life. That's okay, and, right. So now, there's much less, I was gonna say there's no separation. I mean, I don't know that I could say that, but, as close to that, I really just show up as, as who I am in every environment. And if I'm hanging out with super activists, I don't hide the fact that I'm a lawyer. If I'm a lawyer world, I talk about what I care about.
I see.
Even calling my book Authentic Negotiating, my value of authenticity is out there. It's the last question I ask on my Fueling Deals podcast all the time is about authenticity. It's all together now. I don't compartmentalize it.
That's really fascinating. And that's really fascinating. It's just, so if you go in to perform somewhere, you're going in there 100% being yourself with just a different focus.
Yeah. Right. Obviously you're going to, in certain environments call for you to bring different parts of who you are and skills and information to them.
Yes.
But, so I am obviously still picking and choosing on what's appropriate to serve that audience or serve that client or serve whatever. But there's nothing that I'm actively hiding or judging that I shouldn't bring up in this environment.
Right. What you're saying is it's it's still, you're coming from truth. So it doesn't matter, although you're like, because what I teach is, that's why I'm talking about it. What I teach is we have alter egos for different parts of our life.
Yes.
But what I love about what you're saying, it's being authentic again, but being like completely transparent and truthful of who you are, and in all of those areas, but with, again, a different cap that you're playing in each one of those areas, because that's a different focus or maybe a different belief about what you're going to accomplish. But the truth is, it's purely, you're just transparent and you're not attached to other people's opinions of you.
Yes. And I'll give you an example just to illustrate, so you know, because I always find examples help people, right?
Yeah.
So,
cool.
I had somebody I was introduced to. I didn't know them that well at the time. They've since become a very good friend, but back then I met them once and whatever. And they come in and they wanted to talk to me because they were imminently going through a divorce. Now, I don't do any divorce work, but he had some significant businesses that could be impacted by the divorce, and he wanted to understand where he stood from the business point of view. He was going to have a separate matrimonial attorney handle that stuff, which I don't.
Right.
You know, so we had that discussion, but what I kept getting the hit, like internally, like I kept getting the message that there was a certain type of personal growth work that I've done that would be good for him, right? In the past, I mean, this is a legal consult with a new prospect who doesn't know me. Right before that time, and this was, you know, probably almost 15 years ago,
okay.
I wouldn't have brought that up, right? I would have just stayed in my lawyer mode, like, you know, like I have no idea how open the sky is to transformational work. I don't know how that's going to sound. How's it going to make me look as a lawyer? But the difference was, you know, at that point, this is what I do more. Like if I get a hit that I should talk to somebody about something, and it seems not to be related to the hat I have on, but I'll trust that. Right. And I did. And I said, you know what, listen, Jim, I said, in addition to doing all this stuff we talked about legal, you know, I don't know if you're open to it, whatever. I just want to say what I'm getting is a hit that you would really be served by going and doing this transformational work that I've done that would really help you in this situation. And he ended up doing it, and he thanks me to this day, like, you know, for that and for the legal advice and whatever. But, you know, and that's something when I was younger, I wouldn't have, like, I would have said, no, I can't do that. I can't mention that.
Right. I'm in this role right now. I have to have these beliefs right now. This is right. I get that. I love that, man. So the 15 years ago, the decision would be to be 100% truthful and authentic in all areas of your life, no matter what the consequences.
Yeah, and the way I look at it is bringing my full self to everywhere, because again, I don't think any of those aspects of me were fake prior to that. I just think they were much more rigid in the compartments I put them in.
Gotcha. So if we did the opposite, if we forward the movie, right? Let's forward the movie 5 years, 10 years, 15, you know? I know we might not even know if we're going to wake up tomorrow, but let's pretend we do. Where's the vision, man? Is this you hustling forever?
So I guess there's a couple of things. I mean, where I've really been moving much more so into, and I'm starting to hate this word because it's becoming overused, but I'll say it anyway. You know, is I've been spending much more time on thought leadership, right?
Beautiful.
You know, I've been spending much more time. I mean, I built my law firm business, you know, in a very traditional way, and just doing great work and building relationships and networking and getting referrals and that kind of stuff. All right. And although I was known in various quarters, and you know, I've been speaking for about 20 years, you know, on stage and that kind of stuff. So I would do that. You know, I didn't hop early on, especially, you know, when people started doing it online, social media, internet, whatever, you know, in sort of putting out content and being a thought leader and that kind of stuff. And one of the things that, I mean, and it came from just people encouraging me. They said, including my wife and others who said, Corey, listen, you have sort of wisdom in certain areas, experience, you get such great results. You have a different way you approach certain things, like on the negotiating.
Absolutely.
you know, you need to get that out there more broadly. You need, you know, you need to serve more people beyond, yes, you do a great job with your clients, you do a great job in the organizations that you've led and been involved in. People get it from the stage. So it's not like it's not getting out there, but even more broadly, right? So, you know, that's one of the things that inspired me to write the Authentic Negotiating book. Now I've launched this Fueling Deals podcast.
We'll talk about that in a second. I'm excited to hear more about that.
And going forward, you know, that's more of the direction, because you know, for me, it's really about impacting more people. And, you know, so how can I impact more people? And the last thing I'll say in order to do that is I've been focusing the last year, and I'm almost done with it, I have a great team, but I needed to even augment further and build a further team to free me up even more to focus more on this stuff. So I am on the verge of making the last key hire that I need to make to set me up for the next decade of being able to be freed up and be out there.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. Yeah. Well done, man. Well done. That's huge. You should be so proud.
Yeah.
What's your definition of thought leadership?
Yeah, so this is great, and it's funny. I just listened to a solo cast, so I'll give a little shout out to Stephen Westner, who runs Predictive ROI, and he's a guy who his company does my podcast, you know, all the production on it, and you know, consulting on it, whatever. And he just did a solo cast on it, so I'll give him a shout out because I literally just listened to it, and I agree with what he said. You know, some people think thought leadership these days are, you know, you got to get out there and promote the hell out of yourself, right? And it's so not that, right? It's so not that, right? It comes from that being of service, from being, you know, from contributing. So, you know, my approach to it is that if I think I have something to offer that's going to make a difference for people, I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to put a lot of it out there for free, and I'm going to put it out there with no expectation of anything in return. Okay? And for me, that's thought leadership. If you're committed to making an impact on people and you're willing to put it out there, and listen, the reality is people see that, they appreciate it, and if you do it consistently over a long period of time, it's always going to come back to you. You know, you can trust in that, but you can't be driven. It's not a quid pro quo. It's like everything else, right? It's like I can't be meeting you at a networking event, right? And maybe having some business to give you, and then immediately expecting you're going to give me something back. That's not the way it works, right? I don't come on this podcast to go on a stage and expect that I'm going to immediately get a client. I go to serve the audience, to make a difference for them, and I trust it's some way that is probably not going to be linear. It'll come back to me, right? But I don't focus on that part. I focus on the giving. So for me, that's what it's about, thought leadership. It's just doing that on a more broad level. Because when you listen, I moved from the one-on-one, right, to the stage where you do one-on-many, but now you've got a book, which is one to even more, and then you got a podcast, which is one to even more, and that's the thing, is to be able to serve and impact more and more people more broadly.
That's huge, man. And that's why I wanted you on this show, my friend. That's why I want. And speaking of podcasts, let's talk about yours, because we've been rabbiting on, as we say in the UK, for ages now. And I know you're a busy man, but I want to get to this podcast, dude. So, Fueling Deals. Interesting title. Absolutely love it. Tell me more.
Yeah. So what I've come to understand, right? Listen, I'm a deal lawyer. I'm a deal guy. I consult people, right? I've been doing all kinds of deals for 30 something years. So I know what works, what doesn't work, et cetera. But what's really struck me, being so active in the entrepreneurial world, is that so there's only two ways to grow a company. One is organically, and the other is inorganically. Organically is great, providing great products and services and doing sales and marketing, right? That's how you grow organically. And every business needs to do that well. Obviously, you need to focus on that. And everybody does that. But only a very small percentage of the companies grow inorganically through deals. And that is the other major way that you can do it. And the thing is that there is so many misconceptions out there. A lot of people think, oh, in order to do deals, you need to be some big company with a lot of capital, right? And that's not true, because first of all, there are many deals that are done without capital. Second of all, there's all kinds of deals. We're not, sure, there's mergers, there's acquisitions, there's big financing deals where people get, funded by venture capital. But there's all kinds of joint ventures and strategic alliances and joint marketing arrangements and business partnerships and onboarding deals to bring on key employees. And I can go on and on and on with this licensing. There's a million ways to do deals. whether you're a small company, a big company, whatever stage of development, whatever level of capital you have or not. And it's so underutilized. Now, listen, you got to do it right. You know, there are things that can go wrong, all that stuff, like anything else you take on.
Right.
But so the mission, because I'm always mission driven, right? Like the mission of the podcast is to have entrepreneurs and business owners and key C-level executives and companies understand that there is another way to potentially grow their company if they explore it and do it right. And so that when they are pounding their heads against the wall, trying to, because they're stuck on their organic growth, right? Or maybe they're doing okay on their organic growth, but they want to grow more quickly. And again, not more quickly just for the sake of size or ego, but for the sake of providing better service, reaching more people, all the stuff that I believe in. There's another way to do that, and you should at least explore it. So the purpose of the podcast is to have entrepreneurs who've done it, key experts in the area, and people can just listen and start to learn about the space, start to understand, have their thinking, start to, have the creative juices flow.
Absolutely.
Oh, wow, that was interesting. I never knew you could do that. And to, really serve people in that way. And we have about 30, 40 episodes recorded. I think we've just released our 11th episode. And yeah, it's called the Fueling Deals Podcast.
Man, I'm downloading it in a few minutes. I'm telling you, mate, because that's special what you said. Because the internet marketing world is really starting to drive the entrepreneurial world. And it is all about and the world, that world is then branded funnels as the number one thing, right? Facebook traffic, funnels, that's it. That's and the world's gone crazy around that. But the truth is, do you think business was getting done before Facebook ads were around and these online funnels?
Right.
Yes, we were. And what I love about that, the world's become obsessed because people are sheep. And they just follow and follow and follow, and they think that's the right thing. And then they get afraid to do anything else. But the truth is, what you've just said, you've been negotiating for 30 damn years. You know every trick and tactic in the book. And you're coming from heart, which is really about authentic negotiating. But it's really about how can this person help this person serve this.
That's right. That's right.
And that's beautiful. And what you've also said there, which is, I think for a lot of people listening, especially on this podcast, is a key distinction between organic traffic. Because what people are talking about in general with organic traffic, meaning just, nothing paid. But what you're saying is, no, you can pay, you can do all you want. But there's another thing. That's all organic traffic. Paid traffic, that's traffic doing that, putting the content out. That's all organic. But what you're talking about is literally joint ventures. What you're talking about is this other world. Yeah,
let's take somebody who's doing a funnel to drive people into whatever they're going to do. Right? Nothing wrong with that. It's it's great and it works for a lot of people. But why not, in addition to that, say, okay, because if we're trying to create a funnel, what we're doing is we're creating a market for our product directly with consumers, okay? And we need to find them. This is why we do our Facebook ads. We do all that kind of stuff, whatever, and that's all great. But what if in addition to that, I'm not saying instead of, you always have to have the organic growth strategy, but in addition to that, you said, hold on a second, I sell X product or service. Who else sells to that market, right? A non-competing product, okay? Wait a second. Okay, these three companies have access to 1,000, 100,000, 1 million people, right? Who are in my demographic, who buy a comparable product, why wouldn't you approach that company to say, hey, you sell A to all these people, I've got B, all your people are gonna really love B, okay? Because they love this and it's a complementary product, or it's or it's the same demographic. Let's do some sort of deal where I get access to your distribution network, you get access to my great product, and we split the profits. I mean, that's it's just a simple example. Funnels, do your online marketing, do whatever, but ask the question: who else has access to what I want to get access to, and what kind of deal can I do with them to help accelerate my growth and impact more people?
And everyone misses it.
Yep.
Man.
And the companies that do it, you know, I mean, it's a lot of people think. See, this is the other thing. A lot of people think, and it's why, like, you know, a little behind the curtain. I just recorded. It's going to get released on May. I don't know when this is going to air, but
We wanted to.
I love it. But on I think it's on May 8th. I just did on my podcast an interview with David Bach. Right, David Bach wrote The Automatic Millionaire and all the whole Finish Rich series of books, and there's like 9 times New York Times bestseller.
Wow.
He's got a new book out called The Latte Factor. Okay. Phenomenal book. I won't spend a lot of time. Check it out. It's worth it.
Yeah.
Okay. But the thing with, you know, David's a great example. One of the reasons I have these kind of people on, people think, oh, David's a big time author and speaker, which he absolutely is. And unlike most people who make no money on publishing books, he does make money on that, whatever. But that's not his business. That's not his main business, right? David talked about the licensing deals that he does and the equity stakes he takes in companies for the value that he provides. That's where, I mean, what he does on that end dwarfs his book royalties and his speaking fees, right? So a lot of people don't know really even how the successful people are actually making money out there. They see what's out front. So what I love about the podcast, in addition to having experts on, is I have people who share that kind of stuff. And people say, oh, wait a second, a guy like David Bach, yeah, sure, he's a great writer and he's a great speaker and he's been super successful in his books. But wait a second, he's making most of his money on licensing deals and taking equity pieces?
Yeah, exactly, mate. Exactly. Okay. I love it, mate. I love it. And I'm appreciating your time, so we're going to wrap it up in a second, my friend. And I thank you so much for today. You've opened my eyes to and got my wheels spinning in my head. You really have, because and I appreciate you, my friend. I do. I appreciate that the universe brought us together, and I just appreciate you taking the time to come on here, because I know you don't jump on a lot of podcasts and all the rest of it, right? And I want to thank you for that, man. And again, what's the best way we can find you, buddy? Because you're going to get lots of people hunting you down.
Well, hopefully in the good way.
In a good way, man, in a good way.
So the easiest hub is CoreyKupfer.com, CoreyKupfer.com. So they can get there. They can link through to the book there, which is on, all the places you get books. There's a link through to my law firm site from there as well. And they can, you go to fuelingdeals.com for the podcast, but also they can get there through CoreyKupfer.com. So that's
beautiful. That's the main hub. That's the main hub. Is there any advice or little words of wisdom you want to leave the Mindset by Design crew with? Anything that pops into your head?
Listen, it may sound redundant, but one of the things, let me just say this. One of the things that I connected with you on, and what I love about your podcast, is because it does focus on that mindset. And I think that is the, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on your podcast, right? People will hear me say this in other places, right? That's where the game is played, right? I believe that the world is manifest from within, okay? Therefore, the entire game is within. Yes, stuff happens, but we don't necessarily have control over everything that happens in our life, but we have 100% control over our relationship to it, right? It's what Stephen Covey said is the difference between us and other kinds of animals, is that for humans, in between stimulus and response is choice. Now, most of us don't live like there's choice between stimulus and response. They say, I lost my job, so I'm miserable, or I didn't get that client, so I'm unhappy. Right. No, you made a choice, because there are people who lose their job and are like, I'm free, that's great, let's go, or I lost that client, they assume that it happened for a good reason. So doing that internal work and understanding the world is manifest from within, I think, is the biggest thing that you can do to help shift that mindset, and then everything else will flow from there.
Amazing, my friend. Amazing. Thank you so much for today. I really appreciate it, Corey.